Greetings to one and all, it's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another episode of Countermeasures. We're in the drawing room again this week. It's been a hot minute before I did one of these. Christmas happened and suddenly 3 months have rolled by. I haven't really uploaded anything other than maybe sort of the odd illustration thing and some gameplay, which I'm working through Resident Evil 9 at the moment, so that should be fun. So I thought I'd have a little bit of a catch up, just because it is time to start rolling these out again and to talk about some of the books that have come out recently, and also to put some art up here, etc., stay relevant and all that. But also, this is the 1000th episode or upload. I guess you could say it's the 1000th upload, not necessarily the 1000th episode. And I think there's a clear defining line there, which is that a lot of the trash that I tend to put on my YouTube channel is like random gameplay and things like that, but there is also quite a lot about design and comic books, etc. So haven't quite hit 1,000 of those yet, but overall in the last 5 years this will be the 1000th upload. So yeah, there you go. So I didn't want to just let another piece of crappy gameplay take that spot, so that's what this is here. And what I thought I'd do is just go through some stuff that's going on at the moment, some things that I'm working on, talking about maybe some books that have come out recently, and also some things that I'm reading, as I'm not kind of too I don't know, there's some things coming out lately that I've not really been that interested in, so I've started going back and rereading some older issues of things, so I just wanted to talk about those briefly. And then I've got like a clip of a painting that I did earlier this week that I thought might be quite interesting, so I'll tag that on at the end. So before I get started on any of the other stuff, let me move this keyboard out of the way for a start. Before I get going on any of the other stuff, and obviously you can appreciate my camera's wonky and the sound's a bit off, so 1,000 episodes or uploads, and the quality hasn't improved, so I'm at least I'm consistent. So this week we have the Pugs in Space issue 2 remastered edition, which it came out a couple of years ago, and Tim Southwell and I, who put this together, we went back and redid a whole load of stuff on these. We wanted to reissue them ideally with a kind of end goal of finishing on issue 5's kind of big epic ending to this cosmic sausage heist saga. And then, we're going to put together like a collected piece of a book that's going to have everything in it. And that'll be on the Waterstones website, hopefully one day actually in the stores. I'm still in discussions with stock and things like that with them, but that's a slow process. The fact that they're actually putting it up on their store has been huge for us, for all of the things that I've been working on, so that's really good. So that just came out. You can get it on Waterstones, you can get it at jackrabbit.comics.com. Cosmic Comics are doing it. It's now on foils, apparently, thanks to Gardeners, who are the distributors for all of this stuff for us, which has been really good. So they seem to be just slipping things in on the online purchasing, so that's all good. And the Pugs, have always been close to my heart, and I've been working on them for a while now, and it's always fun to come back and do these issues. We've got issue 1 that came out last month, which was the remastered one. Sorry if the light's reflecting a little bit there. And then we've got issue 3 that comes out the start of April. And then so I've got a preview of 4 here as well. These were all kind of printed over the last few months, but we're sort of slowly rolling them out. And then issue 5 is what I'm working on at the moment. That'll be completed in June, and then I think either July or August will be the release of the collected volume, which has the entire story in it. And yeah, they've been pretty well received over the years, and since we started reprinting them as well, people have been kind of getting into them, and etc. I must admit, for me, before I did Pugs issue 1, I put books together before. Obviously, I've been a graphic designer for like nearly 30 years, so I've had a lot of input in terms of design and all that kind of stuff over the years, and I kind of know what I'm doing. But when it came down to kind of doing the drawing and the pacing of the story and the pages and just making it all kind of become coherent, and then having page counts that you had to hit to make sure that every issue was viable. If we sold them, at least if we sell an issue, we make our money back off it, and things like that. No one's in it to make millions, but, or maybe they are, but But you have to understand that, there's a whole process involved that I was completely unaware of when I started doing it. And now I'm a seasoned vet, as they say, or I certainly feel that way. So having done a whole load of these, they are just really, really fun to do. And we've got our little formula of how we want to put this one together. This one's a cool one. This is issue 4, a little preview of this, which is the actual format of this one. We decided to sort of change the rotation so we could do some sort of larger visuals and stuff. And I got to play with my inks, which I always like to do. So that is Pugs in Space. There's a variant issue for issue 3, which is the Bark Knight's Return, which is just a kind of take on Frank Miller's Dark Knight, which we always champion on this channel. Other issues that I've got going on: Skipper Whiskers came out last December. That's still available on jackrabbitcomics.com and Cosmic Comics, and it's on Waterstones, and I think this is on Amazon as well. But not, I'm always the worst at kind of shilling for my own stuff, because for me, once I've kind of completed something and once it's kind of all printed and smells nice, I just kind of put it on the shelf and we immediately want to get on with the next thing. And I'm not the best businessman when it comes to the sales side of things. So that's why my patter isn't particularly that hot. And then of course we've got the never-ending roller coaster, which is the Danger Mouse 40th anniversary special. And again, sorry about the wonky camera. And this will go in and out of focus as per previous episodes if you've ever watched any of my stuff. This was a really good one. Interview with David Jason, Tim Southwell and I again. Basically, I did this word search, created this word search, which is probably one of the hardest word searches you'll ever do. So if you complete this, send it in to me and I'll give you a special prize. And then there's a whole load of stories that I illustrated through here, which were all good. Again, learned a lot on this job, because I learned a lot about typesetting for speech bubbles, etc., etc. And obviously, I got to design the rest of it as well, which is all fun. There's even a magic eye. There you go. I won't tell you what that is. So that's all good. Available on Jackrabbit Comics, as always. But that isn't in Waterstones, actually, that one. I think it's just jackrabbitcomics.com, that one. And then, of course, the book that I'm kind of most proud of to date, actually, because of all of the work that I've done over the last sort of like 3 or 4 or nearly 5 years, in this kind of little comic book journey I appear to be on. This is the one that I'm most proud of in terms of, Pugs aside, because that's a whole different thing. But in terms of creating art that I feel it closely represents the kind of thing that I want to put out there, that's a little bit darker, that's a little bit more kind of a little bit more maybe realistic in parts, but I don't know if realistic is the right word for it, but just a little bit edgier, which if I get to get my dip pen out and my paintbrushes, then I'm a happy boy. And obviously this particular volume, so this is volume 1 of Beyond the Black Void, which came out last November. It says December, I guess you do them in advance, but this also has a whole gaggle of other creatives that got involved with the project, which we only started like January, February of 2025, and by October it was completed. So it's an anthology of short stories, some of them not that short. And we had an absolutely great time putting this all together. I got to write a couple of my own stories and illustrate them. I illustrated another guy, Ryan Twyford, who we sort of get together occasionally and start plotting and scheming, and that was really, really good experience working on this. And I got to meet a lot of interesting people, and it was a really super quick way to find a lot of people that were on the same level of thinking that I am, which is, I want to create stuff, I want to get it out there, I want to show people that I respect. I'm starting to build like a volume of work now that I'm very proud of, and this is part of that. Again, Waterstones, Jackrabbit Comics, all of the above. I'll put the links in the thing below. And if that wasn't enough, it just goes on. If that wasn't enough, we have, and these are just some crappy first stats that I ran out. I say first stats now, black and white printouts, whatever. This is Beyond the Black Void, Volume 2. Currently working on this with 90% of the people that worked on the first one. Not that anything's happened to the other 10%, but people are busy and they want to shift around, do different things, and I respect that. But we also have like a whole load of new people joining us that have brought their skills in terms of being an artist, skills in terms of being a writer to this book. And the first one was 76 pages. We're hitting about 110 on the second volume, which is very exciting. But again, there is a design factor to think about because obviously, you know, when you're self-publishing, etc., you know, you can do all this work, you can make it all look very fancy and flowery. But there are elements that start to evolve as you're going along that you realize that actually this is something that I think all artists, specifically artists and people that are laying these pages out, have to consider, is that, you know, the thicker the bind, you know, the thicker the book, and the bind doesn't allow you to, unless it's kind of a perfect bound or whatever, but it doesn't allow you to fully flatten your page unless you break the spine. So you're constantly fighting against a kind of invisible margin in the middle, which, you know, if you don't really think about that, you need to be careful, because you can lose some of the important information of your illustration in that gutter, or you can lose some of your copy in that gutter. And I pick up collected works of like, you know, there might be a 10-issue run of something, and then the collected book is like 120 pages, and you get to the sort of about a third the way through and you can hardly read like a quarter of the page because it's just so fat, unless you break the spine, which of course you can do. But I think if you're designing this correctly, you shouldn't do that. And then another thing that I'm working on, which is actually a spin-off of the Beyond the Black Void stuff, is, and this is with Ryan again, is a series of short stories, and say short stories are sort of like 20-24 pages, which are sort of slightly longer form than the anthology, but they are complete stories, or you know, or maybe spin-offs of stories from the anthology that we can then kind of do much quicker. I think the thing is about an anthology with a group of people doing all of this work is that a kind of 10 to 12 months is about the right amount of time to give everyone enough space to make sure their stories are tight, to make sure they've got enough information into their stories that they keep coming back to and keep refreshing and keep tweaking. And the same for the artists. It gives people enough time to not only do art they're really proud of, but also to make mistakes and redo things, and you know, maybe at that last moment where we're just about to send to print, there's still a tiny bit of time to make any final tweaks. I think that feels right for the anthologies. But for the shorter books, for something like this, I mean, I've been working on all these other projects. I've already done about 9 pages of, or maybe 10 pages of this document already, which again comes out in November. And I've been working on some, you know, a variety of different cover options. There's a third cover for this, which is this story about the survivor. And potentially a fourth one. I'm actually speaking to someone at the moment who I won't shout out just yet, because they haven't fully committed. But when they do, then obviously I'll just be turning up at their house every day. They're potentially going to be doing like a guest variant cover for volume 2, but more on that another day. And the other thing I'm doing, and apologies for the slightly low res of this, just because I very quickly thought I probably should just mention this, is a good friend of mine who also works on the Beyond the Black Void stuff. It runs a whole load of different magazines called Weird Stories. This is issue 4. Kenneth, if you're listening, you did a great job, mate. I love these books. And he just asked me if I would get involved with submitting a story, which I wrote and drew earlier this year. And then I've been working on the cover as well. So that's something that I think it does say winter. So I'm assuming sort of towards the last quarter this will come out. Hopefully I'll get some comps, and be able to show you that properly. But again, a series of an anthology series, that has a whole load of different stories in there that are, you know, similar to kind of Beyond the Black Void, I guess. But you know, everyone has their own branding, their own things going on. It's just really, really cool to be part of that. So you know, the more the merrier. I seem to have a lot of plates spinning at the moment, which is great. You know, I've got a couple of stories in volume 2 going in and all that kind of stuff. And you probably can't quite see, but my wall back here looks a little bit like I'm planning a heist. So anyway, let's get on to the comics, which is the main thing. So that's the promo done. So this week, I mean, for the last 3 months, I've got a stack of comic books that I haven't managed to get through. And I think the problem with that is that my pull lists every week, I'm picking them up and I'm liking the looks of the covers, and then I go to kind of like sink my teeth into them, and something's not quite firing off for me. There's nothing I'm reading at the moment, except yeah, what was the one that I was reading that I did really get into? Sorry, I'm gonna have to do a quick check on my shelf. Yes, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. So I read the first collected works of that and loved it. And then they've just recently done Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, and it's the spring issue set of 5 spring issues. So issue 5 of that came out the other day, and I've been waiting to collect all 5 of them to read them all in one hit. So I did accidentally read the first 2 a while ago, but now I'm going to go back and reset and just go through the whole lot, and that is particularly good. Absolute Batman. I keep picking this up. I'm kind of dropping off a little bit, but then I love the art. So you know, and the variant covers, and they've had everyone working on this from Jock to Bisley to I mean, even Bolland's done a cover, which you know, I mean, it's obviously hitting really hard. They're getting all these kind of A-list artists to kind of go back and revisit this branding and come up with their own concepts and ideas for the covers, and they're just selling. I think issue 1 sold like 3 million or something, and that's, I don't even know if that's including the reprints. So then obviously 2000 AD as well. I mean, again, I keep picking up 2000 AD. I think this is a huge marketing ploy for me to do this, because I wanted to, because I got involved with the competition a few years ago, and I go to Thought Bubble where it's very kind of 2000 AD orientated. And now I seem to be picking up an issue every week, so I've either been truly scammed and sucked in by the marketing, which I'm okay with that, but I must admit that I only really read to Judge Dredd, and then I'll flick through to see if there's a Future Shocks. I have zero interest in any of the other stories. I really should go back and just invest my time in sitting down and reading through one of these, you know, back to back. I think that's my issue, is that by the time part 11 comes out of The Discarded, as good as it looks and as well written as I'm sure it is, I can't tell you what happened in part 2. So I think I need to sit down and actually read those in their entirety. And I may well just do a 2000 AD, all those other stories issues, which if you're having trouble getting to sleep, that'll be the one that you need to listen to. So anyway, never mind about this week. I need to talk about this bad boy, which I have been slowly working my way through. I'm about 200 pages in. This is the collected works of Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, when they first started working on, again, sorry about the light here, so we'll do something about that. Okay, let's margin it down. When they first started working on Daredevil back in the day. I mean, some of these issues I think came out before I was born, so bearing in mind, yeah, they've been around for a while. And what's interesting about this is that it charts every Miller issue that he's involved in from issue 158, which is a while ago now, right through to, I won't skip to the back to give you any spoilers, but it goes right through his entire run. Is it 200 and something? I can't remember where he gets to. It's got to be Daredevil 191. Yeah, so he did actually go through quite a lot of issues. And what's great about this is that when the art starts out, it's kind of hard to tell it's Miller as you know him today, and certainly not today because his style is kind of very polarizing at the moment, but as you did know him in terms of The Dark Knight and in terms of Sin City and 300, you really see, just from a kind of artistic point of view, his style developed to a point where you start to get to some of these pages and this is building up to and includes the time where it overlaps with The Dark Knight Returns, and you really see that development here, which is just so exciting. And also his, it goes from having, I forget who the writer is, it goes from having, Roger Mackenzie did a lot of these scripts. Frank Miller was penciling, and then Klaus Janson was doing the inks. But not very far into his run, Frank just takes over the writing entirely, which is very exciting, which is the bit I've just got to, which is about page 200. And this is where the Electra stories really come to life, and you can start to see some kind of influences of Japanese culture coming into these stories, and then how that then springboards into some of his later work. I mean, it's just an absolute masterclass. I will say that some issues are better than others. What's interesting about that is that you can see where he's got more time. Because the more time he has, and maybe it's not even him, maybe it's like how long Klaus Janson has taken to ink these things. Because it might be they've got a month to turn them around. If Frank doesn't finish them until the third week, as much as Klaus has probably been working on the earlier pages, he may be pressed for time. And I do go through this and look for errors, and that's my biggest from a kind of artistic point of view, that's the thing I like to find. I like to find the kind of little mistakes or the ways they got around things. I think that's why I like all the artists' editions so much, because you really see where the Tipex is on those things, Anyway, this is an absolute banger of a read. I can't even remember how much it was. I think brand new, it's about 150 quid, but I got it in a second-hand bookstore for about 45. So when I found, and it had hardly been touched as well, and it's got a cover wrap, which is up there somewhere. But it had been read once and then sold, and I got it for like 45 quid, so it was an absolute find. But I've been working my way through that and absolutely loving it, so I can thoroughly recommend that. The other thing I'm halfway through reading through, and I very rarely read multiple books like this. I tend to kind of read one, sit around, think about it for a while, then move on to the next. But actually, I've been going on a bit of a sort of rabbit hole, going down a rabbit hole of Wagner work recently and Alan Grant work, especially with the 2000 AD Batman and Judge Dredd. Was it 20th anniversary or 30th? When did I first get that? It must have been, it must be 20th anniversary. No, it must be 30th. Anyway, it's an anniversary of that book, and because of that, just having an old man moment there. I was asking my own brain to remember something, and this is just a brilliant classic story that Wagner and Grant wrote, illustrated by Robin Smith. Yeah, he does a good job of making the lead character of this look like Humphrey Bogart. And what I love about it is that it's that kind of Maltese Falcon story, but it's set in Scotland, and it's genuinely laugh out loud funny, and it's got a real sort of 80s vibe to it, which I absolutely love. And randomly, which I wasn't going to mention, it sounds a bit sounds a little bit like name dropping, but I did meet John Wagner a few years ago. He wrote in it, "Here's looking at you, Jason." John Wagner. Now, I get the feeling that he writes that in everyone's book, but I like to think that he just personally wrote that to me and that he's never written that to anybody else. The other thing that I did pick up the other day, which I actually got from... this is one I have looked through in the store, but I haven't opened my own copy yet. This is the Kevin O'Neill book, which is the collection of work that he did a while ago, which I believe was like a personal project that he was working on that never became anything. It's called Silent Pictures, has this really awesome slipcase, which I love all this stuff. But what's great about this, and no disrespect writers of the speech bubble and then and it's nearby and shortly at the docks writing, is that none of that's in here. There's no speech, I'm afraid. It's all silent. And if you've read any Kevin O'Neill, which I fell in love with Nemesis the Warlock when I was about 4, and partly that was to do with Kevin O'Neill, and then he did martial law, and then of course he did the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which actually is a bit wild and out there, and there's dealing with Alan Moore's scripts, I'm sure, were both exhilarating and a nightmare, but this is a collection of his illustrations. I'll probably do a proper deep dive on this one day, because it does actually have, so this one's called Fear Island. This one's called The Balaclava Kid, and they're essentially set up as like yeah, there's a whole load of like his illustrations. There's a foreword there that I haven't even gone anywhere near yet. But just all of this stuff is just a masterclass, you know. 2000 AD alumni, of course, sadly is no longer with us, but nonetheless continues to inspire artists across the board, and long may he do so. There hasn't ever been anyone quite like Kevin O'Neill to hit the market. Certainly not in the last kind of 10-15 years. You know, I see a lot of people kind of going down the Marvel slightly generic route, which I do find a little bit kind of, I'm a little bit over that. It's watering down a lot of what I love about books. In my opinion, I just feel that like there's not enough art out there that's challenging me at the moment. Maybe it's partly to do because I'm trying to push myself creatively in that way, and I'm trying to find parallels to things that I would like to do. And there aren't many things now that I look at that I really truly get inspired by. However, issue 62 of Dark Horse Presents, Frank Miller, 1992. Actually picked this up today. It was from the Notting Hill Book Exchange, which in the 30 years I've been living in London, I have never ever been to. And today I went into it, and it's a sort of relatively small little bookshop with comics at the front and lots of graphic novels, and then a few more comics at the back. But they have some absolute bangers. So I collected this one today, which is the original print of when Marv goes to kill Kevin. If anyone loves Sin City, then they will know what that's all about. And if you've seen the film, you'll know that too. Again, absolute masterclass in how to draw, how to deal with... there are no shades of grey in this book. It's all black and white and done in a way that is just like so inspiring. And, you know, without books like that, you wouldn't have artists like Danny. And I suspect, you know, The Dark Knight Returns and a lot of the work around that time, 300, like the Xerxes series, I suspect that's a huge influence on Jock as well. Those two are particularly high up in terms of current artists working at the moment in the comic industry. Really respect their work, especially Dan. I mean, Danny's taken such influence from Sin City, and I actually think, you know, nothing to take away from Frank Miller's rawness, but if he opened the door, she stepped through it, because her ability to kind of make just very simple black and white line work with someone, you know, someone being in a room, you know, just the form, the figure, the structures of buildings, everything just kind of fits perfectly with her art, and it all starts with Frank Miller. I also picked this up, which is Moon Knight issue 3. It's the special edition. It's actually a reprint of the Hulk number 20, which came out in 1980. That's why I picked it up, and I thought, oh, this is in particularly good condition. But this came out in 1984. I was 7. This is Bill Sienkiewicz, and I will pick up issues of Bill Sienkiewicz from time to time, because what I like about Bill is that, firstly, he's the GOAT, right? Okay, so everyone loves Frank Miller, and you've all got your favourites, and maybe you're a fan of Jeff Senior, or maybe you're a fan of a whole multitude of artists at the moment. It all comes back to Bill. Bill set the standard on being able to mimic Neil Adams, being able to find his own style, and now, I mean, not even now, the mid-80s, he just starts blowing everyone out of the water with his creativity. And what I like about these early issues, these issues are really interesting, because this isn't really how he draws. This isn't how he colours. You know, I mean, actually, the colours for this were done by someone else, but I suspect Steve Olive has got the credit for the colours, but there is some art in here that definitely had some, you know, his work obviously carried that over slightly. So I suspect Bill had something to do with the colour, because some of the decisions on how colour works on these pages, I don't think it was just left down to the colourist on these. Anyway, I may be wrong, but it feels that way. And what's interesting about these is that this is Bill Sienkiewicz when he has a tight leash on. So they're basically telling him, you know, he broke into the industry, ultimately being a Neil Adams clone for a lot of work. A lot of this stuff is based around Neil's style. And then what's interesting about that is that as Moon Knight goes on, and actually during this time, as it becomes more popular, he starts to let loose a little bit more, and he does New Mutants, and then the rest is history, as they say. But I do like seeing those issues. Similarly with the Daredevil omnibus, is looking at those books makes you realise that actually these guys just didn't come out of the gate being the hottest thing ever. They actually did. They did enough to get themselves, in the limelight and to have a spotlight on them. And then as soon as they had the freedom to move around, my God, didn't they? So then we've got a Frank Miller. This is again something else that I picked up, which is so it's a story and art by Frank Miller. This is the Xerxes series, but it's just the single issues. There's something about the paper quality that I don't like about these things. There's something about, I don't know, it's that kind of 110 GSM silk, which just kind of feels a little bit throwaway. I don't think it does the art any favors. I just feel like it lacks something. And I think what it lacks is, it looks like everything did in the 90s, which is like, oh, things are shiny now. We can print stuff shiny because we've been printing on crappy paper for years. Now we can print stuff that's shiny. So, hooray for that. And basically it doesn't everything look great. Now what they're forgetting about these things is that when you flick through a book that's like meant to be like a sort of historical story, which this kind of is loosely linked to that, I feel like the type of paper and the format that you're putting it into has a lot to do with how you're telling the story. So like, this paper feels like it should be like a tactile uncoated kind of thing, you know? It should be slightly off. Maybe there isn't 100% white. Maybe the white is actually always like a kind of 10% yellow. I think that's why as comics from the sort of 70s and 80s get older and older and I reread them, I like them more because there's distortion happening. There's every time I go through one of those books, it's gone a slightly sort of more manky. It was never meant to last. Whereas this stuff, it feels like it could last for a long time. And also, look, there we go. So you can see here, just going back to how these are bound. Now this is stitched, stapled for anyone in the UK, but we like to call it stitched. And you can see that here on this particular print, those pages have an issue in the center where they've actually, they've had a problem with the center page, which means that those pages are kind of almost stuck together. They've almost got like something keep holding them together. And they did that because when you close it, that page doesn't stick out. The problem with that is they've distorted the horse, so you start to lose things in the centre. But that's just what the things that I see. That's just what I'm considering constantly throughout my day. Not that that's a problem, and yes, am I critiquing a Frank Miller book? Yes, it looks like it. Why don't I just shut up and get on to the next one? Because quite frankly, what do I know? But these are the things I notice, and that's why we're here. That's why there's 4 people watching this, because they also wonder about things like that. Or if they don't, they should. You're in the right place. And then this is, again, another Xerxes issue. Yeah, there's something about instantly, before I've even seen the art, which, by the way, is amazing. Again, just wondering if that has the same issue. It does have the same issue. So you can see that second to center page has a glue line running down it, which means that you're starting to, and I don't know if my camera's going to focus, but you're losing detail here. Look, you've lost that guy's eye into the center. Anyway, that's just a design thing. That's just, my wife just pats me on the back and says, yes, dear. So yeah, those are the books that I picked up today. There is one more, which I haven't opened yet, which I'm looking forward to seeing. And this was just a random copy. Again, Notting Hill Book Exchange, if you get to go. It's right by Notting Hill Gate Tube, whatever. Yeah, they had an issue of Alpha Flight. And we love Alpha Flight because John Byrne is Lord. This is what I mean. There's something nice about this. It's not right for the Beyond the Black Void stuff, because that feels like it should be on the paper it's on. I'm wondering if when we print the Void Tales, whether it should be on super trashy, slightly smelly off-white paper. That would be my preference anyway, but basically what I'll do, I'll get Ryan really drunk, and then he'll say yes to everything. So that's how I get him to do projects. I think that's what I've worked out. He won't be watching it this far. He won't know my secret. So I think that is just about it. I'm going to stop talking now because I've been going on for far too long, but that's kind of like this week's comics, things I'm reading, a little bit of critique, some hot tips from the press, etc. So thanks for watching, and this has been the 1000th upload episode, whatever. And if you've been watching this long, which some of you have been actually, thanks very much. If you're new, then welcome to the armpit of comics, which is where I dwell, and long may they last. There's plenty more coming up. We've got a whole load of other ideas about certainly talking about going on a bit of a deep dive of a series of artist editions that I've got that I would really like to go through, because there are some absolute giveaways on how people have solved various issues they've had with pages, how they've fixed stuff, and not just talking about whiteout, but where you can see pages have been redrawn, sections have been cut out, and and why those were done. And again, the process of these things and all of these artists is that they don't come out of the gate always firing at 100%, even when they're at the top of their game. So things get redrawn, things get redone, and ultimately they end up in a much better place. I'm interested in that process because that's something that I'm constantly going through at the moment. Certainly the redrawing side of things, and I'm going to put a video up which is going to show exactly that in just a second. And the only other thing that is going to happen at some point, which I'm talking to some fellow creative nerds about at the moment, is actually there's several things happening. The first thing is we're thinking about maybe putting together like a proper podcast talking about books and things like that. Not saying that this isn't a proper podcast, but I think I need somebody else to talk to other than me. Just sitting in my little room with a crow mask seems a little bit sad, but that's something which is in development. I'd like to do something on that later this year. We've got volume 2 coming out of Beyond the Black Void, so I feel like that could be a good little lever, a good way to get talking to some of those creatives and their experiences working on the first volume and the second volume, etc. So I thought that might be quite fun. We also are going to Thought Bubble, which we always do in Harrogate in November. I believe that's the 15th weekend of the 15th, 16th, or 16th, 17th, whatever that middle weekend is. I'm not tabling this year because I did really enjoy doing that last year, but it kind of became a little bit restricting in as much as I wanted to go and talk to quite a lot of people about various things, and I kind of felt myself tied to one spot. Even though we had great fun doing it, afterwards I kind of felt, actually, I think maybe next year I'll do exactly the opposite, which is I'll just go along and just do what I did in the previous years and just talk to people, and we've got something to show them now, whereas before we didn't. So that's a very exciting prospect for me and for all of my fellow creatives working in those projects. So there's that. Also, the other thing that's happening is that I will be going to Lawless I think that's in May, which is like a 2000 AD event in Bristol, and I think Brian Bolland's going to be there. Jock, I'm sure Bisley will be there because they're promoting the Judge Dredd and Batman book that I mentioned to you before, which is all his work, or certainly part of it. And John Wagner will probably be wheeled out again, even though he's about 1 million years old, and I think he's finished his last Judge Dredd story, but who knows? I don't like to think that, so let's not talk too much about it. It's a raw nerve, but he is an interesting guy who, I'm never going to doorstep and interview any of these people because I just feel I'm such a fan, but also I don't want to embarrass them or any of that kind of stuff. But they are doing some talks, which I can't wait to see. The other thing, speaking of talks, is that I'm going to see Frank Miller in July. He's talking in London. He's promoting his book, which is essentially like his life story, and I think it's Sin City and beyond. I don't know how much of his prior to that period of his life it's going to be about. I think he has a couple of other sort of memoirs and things out about that time. So this is specifically about that period, I believe, and also talking about his involvement in film and things he's done since then. And he's become quite a polarizing character with some of his opinions. I believe he kind of got targeted a little bit. He did sort of cross the line a couple of times on some things he said and maybe some things he's drawn, which have been sort of raised the odd eyebrow. But you know what? At least he's raising eyebrows, so I'm looking forward to going and seeing that. So that's pretty much everything. I'm rushing to the end because I don't want to keep going on and on and on, which I have been for ages. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate the support over all the years. If you've got this far, thank you. I do really like the fact that there's this little vent that I can go to and just talk about the things that I'm interested in. And I start meeting people that are interested in similar things, and it's opened up a lot of doorways and it's opened up a lot of doors and lowered drawbridges over the years, and I've made a lot of friends through doing it, and I'm going to continue to do so, and upload a load of dodgy video games of me getting murdered horribly. Resident Evil 9, that's the next thing. Until next time, be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Peace out. We gone.